So what do you think is China's goal with this? Because the United States, as we talked about, is mainly to keep shipping lines open. Is this just so the CCP has the way to conquer Taiwan? Do they have ambitions beyond that? Why do they want to become the dominant naval power?
I think China has both regional ambitions and global ambitions, and I think the immediate regional ambition, of course, is to have the tools to coerce Taiwan, and failing that, to conquer Taiwan outright. But Chinese leaders also understand that naval power has a lot of utility, beyond warfighting, and so having a force that can project power to show China's flag around the world is a critical element of China's long-term aims. The way I think about sort of why does China want a big navy is to go back to the China Dream, which is Xi Jinping's bumper sticker for China's long-term goals. And there are sort of external manifestations of the China Dream that would, I think, help to explain why the Navy is such an important part of its project. So I think the most important one in my view is China's longer term ambitions to emerge as the local dominant power, the regional hegemon, if you will, of East Asia, that would put China at the epicenter of East Asian international relations. And what that means, of course, is to substantially reduce American power and influence in the region. And I think Chinese leaders believe that the Chinese Navy will play a very important role in nudging and pushing the United States out of the region. As I mentioned already, a key part of the China Dream is to, quote unquote, reunify Taiwan. And again, because of its maritime character, China needs a navy to do that. China also wants to conduct what it calls great power diplomacy. And the best tool to show the flag is the Navy. It's the most important outward facing part of Chinese statecraft. And finally, we have the Belt and Road Initiative. The entire half of that initiative is maritime in character. And so China believes that it needs to have a powerful naval force to protect its proliferating overseas interest, many of those interests connected by sea. So I think the China Dream itself tells us a lot about why the Chinese Navy is so important to Xi Jinping and his subordinates.
So just strategically, if China is able to take Taiwan, is that enough to effectively break the first island chain as far as being able to contain China? Is that enough for China to then be able to project power outward, especially with alliances in the Pacific Island nations like the Solomon Islands?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I actually recently wrote a piece about how China views Taiwan as a geostrategic asset. I think there has been for a long time analysts who sort of, again, downplayed the idea that Taiwan was valuable to China as a geostrategic asset. But if you read Chinese writings going back 20 years, I think they make it very clear that Taiwan is a geopolitical asset for a variety of reasons. So the first reason is that Taiwan actually could potentially form a part of China's natural defensive barrier, because when they think about the geostrategic configuration of the features along the first island chain, some Chinese strategists have linked the most eastern tip of Shandong Peninsula and the east coast of Taiwan and the southern coast of Hainan as representing the most forward extension of China's natural endowed territories. And so having Taiwan would help to basically set up this defensive wall that helps to defend China's near seas. Chinese strategists also believe, because of Taiwan's position sitting at the midpoint of the first island chain and, of course, forming the Taiwan Strait, is that it is a critical hub for maritime communications. It really is central in terms of sea lines of communications, connecting markets in Northeast Asia all the way through Southeast Asia. And then there's also an offensive component, I think, that gets at your question, which is that Chinese strategists believe that getting Taiwan back would allow China to forward station military forces, air forces, missile forces, surface ships, as well as submarines. And in particular, Taiwan would give China direct access to the deep waters of the Pacific. And so having Taiwan, from China's perspective, would give China all of these geostrategic advantages. And on top of that, it would in many ways break the first island chain in the sense that, from Japan's perspective, Taiwan has basically been in what you might call friendly hands for over a century. So, Taiwan was a colony of Japan's for about 50 years. Then we had an anti-communist regime under Chiang Kai-shek on the island. Then in the 1990s, Taiwan liberalized and became a vibrant democracy and a critical economic partner of Japan. So for 100 years, Japan has not had to worry about this critical southern flank. It's sort of security anchor to the south. And so if China were to take over Taiwan, it would be a geopolitical earthquake for Tokyo. It would fundamentally transform the way our most important ally in East Asia views the security environment. And I think one last thing to note is that the only way for China to achieve regional hegemony is, first of all, to wrap up all of its most important territorial disputes, including Taiwan, that would set itself up for further regional domination. And we know from history that global powers' first step is to achieve regional dominance before they can look further afield. And so in my view, if China does indeed have more ambitious global ambitions, then it has to achieve regional dominance. And in my view, that regional dominance will run through Taiwan.